logged in. I see Susan from Dalian, who's logged in all the way from Switzerland. Hi, Susan. If you can hear me, I can't see you at the moment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and we can see you as well. Good morning to you.
Hello, good. Hello to everybody.
All right. Lovely to see you here, Susan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be looking forward.
Thank you. All right, Ruchika, over to you.
All right, thanks, Vijaya. I just wanted to start out by welcoming everyone to the launch of our flagship program for the year, the Virtual Learning Lab. I'm Ruchika Hiranandani. I'm the lead associate for capacity building here at Social Lens. And just a few minutes before we begin, could everyone just switch their mics and cameras off so that the speakers can be clearly seen and heard? The session is being recorded. We want the session to be a little bit interactive, so please leave your questions whatever you have in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the session whenever we have our question and answer round. If you have any issues with your camera or you can't hear something, please just inform one of the hosts. The hosts for today are Anifia, Anusha, Mimansa, and Shankar. So if you just post on the chat box, somebody will help you out. And if you could just change your name to have your name and your organization name where possible, so we know that where you're from, that would be great. All right. So, I just want to start out by talking about how the idea of the virtual learning lab sort of came about. Through the last year, we've actually spoken to many nonprofits, foundations, many professionals in the sector. And the one thing that we noticed majorly was that the awareness around certain topics was sort of skewed towards one section or one sector of the whole development sector at large. And these topics, is something that we call hot button topics because everyone brings them up, everyone talks about them. Things like using data for monitoring and evaluation, corporate volunteering, social and behavioral change. Everyone has something to say about them or has an opinion about them. But for the people on the ground and for the people who are supposed to be using these topics, they struggle to maybe even understand the implication of them, and it's very secondarily even understanding how to apply these topics to their day-to-day programs and their jobs. So our aim through the virtual learning labs is to democratize this information, and we're going to do this through short, easy to digest, open access, digitally enabled sessions. One of the largest challenges through our conversations that we've observed is data and the lack of good data practices around data. And this is why this is the theme of the launch event that we've chosen. Through our Good Data Collective, we will bring in experts in the fields of data collection, usage, privacy, and security, all the topics in the realm of data, to talk about good data practices throughout our sessions, including the launch event. So post this launch event, these sessions will be run as 25 to 30 minutes knowledge nuggets on our YouTube channel, and they'll run the first Saturday of every month. And the reason we've chosen to do this on YouTube is that so that these videos are available offline for people who don't have, ready internet access. They're freely accessible to everyone because we want this, information to go across all channels. And it's, they can be made compatible through language compatible through subtitles. The key for us is to turn the challenge of the myriad of information out there into opportunities that organizations can actually use. And we want to do this by driving awareness, sharing insights, and changing mindsets where needed. We want to cut through all the noise that's in the sector, that's around these topics. And to do that, we're working with expert practitioners in the field so that organizations will only be exposed to all the information that's useful, relevant, and practical. We will be communicating more details around the program and the virtual learning labs in general all through the year. This will be on our social media. We will be sending out emails about it. So do pass on this information to whoever you feel needs it. As I said, it's available to everyone, one and all. We want everyone to be part of this community that we're creating around the conversations that are being held, that are being had in the sector. I'll now hand over to Alifia and Anusha, who have been at the helm of executing this event, and they will set the context for the panel discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the launch of the Virtual Learning Labs. Anushka, next. So let's move into talking about data. There's a stark difference and a gap between collecting data and utilizing data. So what we've seen is over 90% of non-profits actually collect the data, but are not fully equipped with what to do with it and how to best use it. Organizations are able to realize and recognize that data is important, but there is definitely a gap in understanding how organizations can use it to support their work. So there are actually very few organizations today that are fully confident that their data is being used effectively, optimally, and properly. And only 5% of them actually do know how to use data to drive decision making. Next, please. So data is a forerunner of our digital economy. Structured and unstructured data through emails, financial transactions, donor reports, audio files, web pages, social media messages are all mined to harness intelligent insights. You will be surprised to know that humans generate 1.7 megabytes of data in just a second. So convergence of data is all around us. So the traditional way of putting a coin in the basket to get donations has been replaced by getting digital donations. Money raised by hand is now shifted to money raised on a mobile phone. So technology that was once limited to technocrats and institutions with deep pockets is now available to the masses. The vital skills to utilize technology are less about writing lines of code and are more about the ability to embrace change and adapt to constant change. Data that was once lost as exhaust is now being used as the engine to fuel growth. So the future is data driven. Companies have recognized that, governments have recognized that, and now is the time for the nonprofit sector to embrace the possibilities of what data can do. Data driven nonprofits can accelerate change when the staff use the data to influence their strategy, inform decisions that produce value and impact. Now, in order to make change happen, we need to create insights that do that, and data is the raw material for that. When nonprofits focus on creating data to information insights, social value is created. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Data is very crucial for the overall performance of every organization. As you know, it forms the backbone of an organization. So data-driven decision-making is vital because it enables us to observe the data in real time and then make predictive and real-time decisions. It provides us the ability to research and know what is working well for the organization, what is not working well for the organization. And it also helps the management to implement policies and strategies which are useful for the development of the organization. So it essentially helps the organization transition from the I think to I know. It just gives a lot of factual verification that you know you're doing something on the correct path and you're backed up by the data. So within an organization, it can help you validate your observations in the field. It can help you choose what direction and solution works best for you. And you can also make an action plan to achieve the desired results in your tasks. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Anusha to, yeah.
Hi, everyone. So while we've understood why and how data is growing in importance, it is also essential to understand what holds organizations back. Some of these challenges include reporting to multiple stakeholders, complicated processes and strategies, timescale and relevance, internal resistance, and a lack of funding and resources. Each of these challenges is also linked to one another. For example, multiple stakeholders include the community being served, staff, donors, and policymakers. The nature of reporting, therefore, differs for different stakeholders, and this can pose a challenge. And we see that organizations need to know how to cater to these different reporting requirements. Second, working with data sometimes involves complicated processes and strategies, especially when organizations have to navigate large data sets. Often the processes get complicated because organizations are unable to determine why, for what, or for whom they are collecting this data. Thirdly, when there is so much to do, organizations may also face internal resistance, as staff members might feel that this is not their primary role, that they are there to deliver products or services. There may also be uncertainty, or they might be unsure about how the data they are recording is going to be used. And there's also hesitance to share data, especially when, say, the objectives of a planned program haven't been met. Next, with regard to time scale, we always think about impact as something that's happened after a program has ended. And so we wonder whether collecting data through the whole process is necessary or not, or how it could inform a future course of action. However, collecting data during the program is equally important, because it can allow for organizations to plan their next intervention better, or even improve the intervention as the program is ongoing. So data collection and analysis are not something that should be looked at in isolation. Lastly, a lack of resources is a challenge that organizations face. And this is both within organizations and as a result of a paucity of funds. Here, organizations are often unable to invest in training their staff. And this is where donors and funders also play a role, because we may need to see a pivot in terms of whether they are willing to fund such initiatives within the organizations they support. Next slide, please. So creating a data-driven culture is about replacing a gut feeling with decisions that are based on facts. And these can be as simple as whether the organization has its finances in order, or whether the results emerging from its program can be presented in a way that they are meant to. The main aim is to empower everybody in an organization to use data in a way that enhances their work and fully makes the organization realize its potential. However, recognizing what is right and strategic for an organization is essential. And we are here to take you through that journey of understanding how you can recognize what is essential and strategic for you. So it's not only about overcoming challenges related to data, it's also about recognizing what works best for you and how organizations can do that. Next slide, please. So we are very happy to have our partners join us in this initiative today. And I would like to now hand it over to Vijaya Balaji to introduce our partners in this initiative. And we'll take it forward from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruchika, Anusha, and Alifia, and a very good afternoon to all of you who've joined in. I'm very, very delighted to be here and hopefully over the next 75 minutes, we all get to really talk about something that is something that I've been constantly talking about it to anybody who would listen over the last 1 year. And really, I'm very grateful to the 3 individuals who immediately signed up to be part of this. Soumya Moni, whom I met very, very recently. We just met online. We saw what we were doing on LinkedIn. And I think in today's times, I think LinkedIn has facilitated so many wonderful connects. She's a very, very experienced person in the world of big data. She leads she's part of the leadership about women in big data. And Soumya, very, very happy and thrilled to have you as one of the first sort of early adopters to be part of the Good Data Collective. You know, to unpack big data and what it means for social impact-driven change-making organizations. You know, that's what I think we're going to take away. So we'd just like to hear very quickly from you and what your thoughts are around the Good Data Collective, and where do you see, you know, bringing in the world of big data to the world of social impact.
You're on mute, Soumya.
Okay, that seems to be the phrase of 2020 and 2021. You are on mute. So and maybe even going forward. Thank you so much, Vijaya, for this wonderful initiative. I'm so happy when people are talking about big data. I think it's important to separate the wheat from the chaff. So it's really important to talk about good data. And I'm really happy that you're talking about good data that is actually going to influence change and impact, whether it is for social good or for profit. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Good data
Absolutely.
is what is going to influence impact. So I'm very happy. I'll keep it very short. And thank you for the introduction. Women in Big Data is an organization which was founded about 5 years ago globally. In India, we launched it in October 2020 to increase the gender inclusivity or female participation in the field of data and data allied field. So you don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to be someone who is, doing algorithms on a daily basis. You need to be able to have the aptitude and attitude to look at, the finer nuances of, stories behind what the data is telling you. And truth be told, lot of what we see now is just the sheer veracity of data. We're not able to draw meaningful insights from it. So I think our mission is to be able to get more women and more inclusive approach to building data and insights from that data for social
Wonderful.
good, hopefully. So thank you, Vijaya.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I think when we talk about data and its considerations, right, I think one of the things that are really emerging in India are really the usage of data, right? The data privacy, privacy laws, which are much more structured abroad. I know when, as impact consultants, one of the things that our legal counsel always asks us, Vijaya, are you making sure that you and your team are getting consent? Are you coding the information that you're collecting for whichever client you're working on? And I think this is important for all of us to understand, because out there are organizations which are running fabulous programs, whether it is in the trafficking program, whether it is with respect to children, or more, as well as whether it's adolescents, elderly, whoever. I think while of course we wear much more stronger lenses when we're looking at children, I think the fact of the matter remains that it's finally personal data, right? And I talked to my legal counsel and my the team at Barucha and Partners, who've been partnering with both our organizations that I manage, Toolbox and Social Lens. So that's collectively for the last 15 years. And it was just a no-brainer that Kaushik Moitra would be part of this. He was very, very kind enough to be here. Kaushik is partner at Barucha and Partners. Works in the space of data privacy, intellectual property law, and many, many others. And Kaushik, thank you very, very much. When I read all that you do on LinkedIn, and I see the fancy awards that you keep notching, I just want you to bring some of that to the social impact sector, because for a lot of us out here, I speak for ourselves and all the organizations we work with, I think there's a need to unpack what this means. So the Good Data Collective cannot not include the very, very important element around data privacy and its usage and its considerations, all of which will be run through a session later, which the Baruchan part, which Kaushik and his team will run for us. But for now, I wanted you to invite you and thank you for being part of this collective, and hear very quickly from you what your interest or why you think the Good Data Collective makes sense for you. Over to you, Kaushik.
Thank you, and thank you for those kind words. Very happy to be here, and it's fantastic that we've been using the word good and good data, which is nice and which is good actually. Well, for us, social impact is I'm not going to waste time saying what we do. Otherwise, I'll just stick to what we are here for. And the idea is that if we can assist in any form or fashion or partner organizations which help in making a change happen through good data and everything around it, and actually creating an ecosystem around it. And any kind of assistance that we can do there, and we're just very, very happy to do it. And because at the end of the day, we are all supposed to be social engineers, and good data is a movement. So very, very happy to be part of it. Congratulations to Vijaya, her team, and everybody here today. And I think what we are kicking off today is very, very important. It is important not only because we are all here, but it is important because all of us have understood the understood the importance of good data and how it can help in making this place better and the ecosystem around it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kaushik. It's funny because the third person whom I'm going to introduce was someone that, again, I just met a year ago. And by the end of that meeting, I texted him on the Zoom thing saying that we must connect. One thing led to another. And I now present Prasanna Sundaram, co-founder of Augmented Understanding and Saral Sakya. We connected through the Teach for India X program. And Prasanna has already been working with us at Social Lens and Toolbox, and we've been having so many conversations. Augmented Understanding really, again, I think their mission is to really look at how data can be effectively used in the education space. They work with a lot of the change agents in the education system. This is something which I think both Prasanna and Ashutosh are very, very committed to. But I also know that prior to this, Prasanna has been working as a consumer insights consultant overseas. And so he brings the best of the for-profit and the non-profit world together. So Prasanna, very warm welcome to you. And thank you so much for being with us in the Good Data Collective.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vijay. I think it's my pleasure, my honor to be in this really esteemed panel. I'm looking forward to how this conversation is and take this forward, but really wonderful to see how different parts of social segments and social sectors is getting connected, the way you've brought in various audiences. I'm really looking forward to how this goes out, but thank you. This is very kind of you to introduce.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, I think a lot has been said, but I'd just like to set the context around what we really wanted to bring this together. I know my team spoke about the virtual learning labs launch. That's one of the delivery mechanisms of what we want to do. And the first segment really is an offshoot. It cascades from what the Good Data Collective is really about. And what really is the Good Data Collective about? And why is it so essential for us today? Everybody talks about digital transformation. They talk about measurable impact. We're talking about technology adoption. We're talking about bringing in new cultures into the organization and course corrections, data-driven decision-making, all of which are sort of like our mantras when we're talking. Either we're pitching to somebody or we're coaching somebody or we're talking about it all the time. But I think we need to unpack this a little bit more. There are a lot of considerations to take into account. One of the things that we very strongly realized over the last couple of years is, and I'm going to start with the last piece in this, which is really the technology adoption, because everybody's like, let's just adopt technology. Everybody's excited about the idea of technology. And yes, I think as users, as consumers, we all agree and absolutely believe about what technology can do for us. But I don't think the decision really, or the question is about what technology solution do I adopt. I think one of the things we really need to look at is what do you want to use it for? Because it's very linear in their thinking, right? I want to use something that will allow me to measure something so that I can present it to donors and I can present my impact. That's one part of the story. But there's so much more to it. We talk about data-driven decision making. I don't think we really estimated whether organizations have the capacity to undertake those course corrections, because there are costs and there are risks associated. What does that mean? We all talk about pivot. Pivot, I think, has been one of the most abused words in the last 15 months. I've used it like a million times already. So we say that we need to pivot because our insights are telling us this, but they're going to cost us. And so are we ready for it? What is it going to take? Do we have the resources, and are there resources available for it just now? Because right now, in the prioritization of where philanthropic capital is being directed, there are so many other things which have come to precede a lot of things because of what we are all witnessing, something which started in early 2020. And then again, the question is, are organizations even ready for it? What is their level of preparedness? Were they really early movers in this, or are they late adopters? And I think to kind of really set all of this in context is what I would like to table over the next 35 minutes or so. And I therefore extend a very warm welcome to a very experienced panel who bring in very, very different perspectives that actually brings all the balance into this. So allow me firstly to introduce Dr. Sarika Kulkarni, founder of Raah Foundation, was earlier managing the philanthropy arm at India Infoline. And Dr. Sarika, I'd like to believe, will now be a regular. We were fascinated when she spoke about fundraising and what she could share as lessons for a lot of the smaller organizations. And so she is here to talk about the Raah experience and what were some of the things that they did right and what did they learn. I'd like to introduce Ashutosh Sundaram. Again, Ashutosh and Social Lens, we all connected along with Prasanna at Augmented Understanding. He brings a wealth of consumer insights experience as a consultant earlier. He is very, very experienced in the data journey itself, from data scientist, analyst, scientist, I don't know, everything that he can unpack and tell us. And finally, Dr. Atul Gandhi, COO at EdelGive, who is the person we should be talking to when it comes to monitoring and evaluation and measurement, and also looking at what really a lot of the, in his vast experience, what he's really noticed are some of the things that organizations do right and some of the things that they do wrong. But they also do a lot of things right. So we're not here to just talk about what's not right. We also talk about what's working right. So on that note, thank you very much for joining me and welcome to all of you. And straight up, Atul, I'm going to fire the first question to you. You've been managing, you've been managing grant management, portfolio management. You've been looking at measurement and measurement right from grant proposal stage to project completion stage. And if I were just to ask you in terms of what are the three big things which you think organizations should be addressing, non-profit organizations. I don't want to use the word challenge all the time, or what are they not doing right? Because it just presents a very negative connotation to their efforts. But let's just say, what are the three main considerations that you believe that organizations should be paying attention to? And I'm weighing in on you more as somebody who's sitting on the giving side of things. Over to you, Atul.
Thanks, Vijaya. I think you have set the bar very high for me today. So I'll try to do justice as much as possible. I think when I so I draw on my experience of working as an M&E person in the past for a significant time, and now sitting on the other side of the table, as you said. I think what I always feel is that there are organizations who really put a good thought in terms of when they design the program for really looking at how they want to look at the program in terms of monitoring it or evaluating the program in terms of its outcome that they they want to achieve, and then they put a lot of premium on doing it right at the planning stage, right? Somewhere I also find that this is one piece which is very, very weak in some proposals, but that I wouldn't say it is only the what it's the only issue that that is the organization is responsible for. Sometimes they being cash strapped, not having skilled resources available, also translate into these pieces being weak in a proposal. I think the other thing is where you find that the research slide which earlier Aditya and Anusha shared with us. I think the bottom 5 and 6% were the organizations who had got the things right. Right? If you see, because those are the organizations who have not only put in efforts into setting the right measurement plans for themselves, but they have also put in efforts in using that information. I think in today's world, there are only two things, which initiates greed: money and data, probably. So I think what happens is when people start thinking about it, and one, as the technology is more and more accessible, what happens is people try to, compress everything together. Let us do whatever we can with technology, and that really doesn't serve the purpose when it comes to addressing challenges or doing things right. That also is one place where things go wrong, right? We try to try to capture everything, but not really thinking how I'm going to use this one data point that I'm looking at capturing it, right? See, with technology, simple Google Forms will enable you to capture individual level data.
Absolutely.
But does my program need it? Some get it right, some don't get it right. So the effort goes into gathering individual level data so much that you don't end up using even 10% of it. And that translates into another problem, that the field team don't see what happens to their data. I think no matter what you collect, it's very important. It's rather, I would say, equally important that you process that information and share it back with team, right? It sometimes is very important in terms of even as we every day look into mirror. That's a mirror, right? The data is a mirror for us. We can look into it and understand what we have been doing. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? Right? And it also helps us to understand, is it, am I capturing my hard work? I, as an M&E professional, always feel that, there is, the M&E person doesn't generate data in his pockets, right?
Yeah.
But is entrusted with the most important responsibility to ensure that that they showcase the hard work of entire program, entire organization to the rest of the world, right? And if you get it right, the 5 and 6% in the chart earlier, and there were some very important points which one earlier slide also shared. What are the internal challenges in terms of use of data and capturing information? I think those who are able to address it, succeed in that mission. And when there is a challenge at that level, then there is a lot of struggle.
All right. Thank you, Atul. Ashutosh, I'm just going to come quickly to you. One of the things which you said has stuck in my memory forever, and honestly, I've started borrowing that. I've been using that line. So I stole your line when you said that Microsoft Excel is the Swiss Army knife of, data tools. You said, if you can use Excel and make do with it, why do you need to look at something else? But my question really is not about tools at the moment, Ashutosh. I want to lean in on the insights part of things, both at AU and at Saril Sakya. Now, contrast this with your experience in the consumer world, where every data point, every behavior of ours is being mapped and used, created into algorithms, and they're drawing insights. So whether it's pushing content or Swiggy telling us you haven't ordered today and you need to, or Netflix telling us you need to watch this, there's so much of nudging that is coming our way. Now, I don't think I want to say that we need to extend that into the social impact world, but let's just stick to insights, right? And just understand for a moment. We talk about insights, we draw insights. Now, donors are going to draw insights from M&E reports, and they're going to make whatever they want out of it. Are organizations in their analytical journeys, have they reached, where are we in India in really using those insights? Because I still believe a lot of data is captured for reporting purposes, Ashutosh. And what do we really need to do around that? So let's not, because a lot of these organizations are very early in their data journeys, right? They've not really progressed. So how would you really kind of sort of demystify this and put it out there? One, are organizations aware and recognize the kind of insights they can draw? Are they using them? And if they are, it's heartening to note they are, then we'd like to know how. But what do we really need to do? Because ultimately, all of us are here as to see how we can kind of change and support the at an ecosystem level. So that's my question to you straight up.
Firstly, Vijaya, thanks so much for having me here. Just a pleasure to be with Dr. Atul and Dr. Sarika. I just take 30 seconds with EdelGive. We had the opportunity to work with one of your beneficiaries, Dr. Atul, and with Dr. Sarika. I had connected some time back, just when we started the social enterprise. Now to come to the question, Vijaya, what is it that we have to do at this point in time in the country, in the sector that we are in? I think the first thing that all of us need to do is to stop alienating ourselves as a social development domain to begin with. The fact that we have been looking at ourselves as a very different domain from the upstream or the corporate is the problem, is where the problem begins, because we have not been able to really see through and look at us as just another firm. And I'm just going to borrow the line Dr. Atul mentioned, that there is either money or data, and hopefully most social enterprises are not behind money, but they are behind impact. And that's exactly what we should be looking at with respect to data. And the reason why we have not been able to really harness that is because of this alienation. And the reason that happens is because in most organizations, and I'm sure Dr. Atul will also agree with me, the M&E domain or the department is always looked separately.
Yeah.
It's always a department which is there, which
yes.
let's do this. Versus in the corporate, everybody is driven by data. There are KRAs, there are OKRs, there are goals given to everybody based on data. Am I audible? Is it clear?
You are. You're just a little bit soft.
Okay. I hope it's better.
Much.
Yes. So we in the corporate, when we are driving insights, we are focusing on everything to do with data for every individual, every team. Versus in the social enterprise, we are now really demarketing that to just the M&D teams. And that's where it happens. That's where the problem begins, because from there, every other department is given a mandate saying, hey, this is what we need to agree upon. This is what we need to track, because we want to report these to our donors. And if we are able to really draw from there and then build on that, saying, hey, we need to make sure that it's accessible to everybody, I think it will be a good journey for all of us. A lot of organizations have started doing that, but I think we have a long way to go. And with adoption of technology and data with the right mindsets, I think we will all be able to do that much better.
Okay, I'm just going to flip this back again to Atul before I then go to Dr. Sarika. So Atul, what I've heard from you and from Ashutosh is that yes, we shouldn't be looking at MEL data as as something very separate, as to fulfill one particular thing, but really integrate it more as a part of a very important sort of engine that delivers impact, right? So if we start looking at it, maybe treating it as, maybe it's also in the way we're looking at it, right? Because you're right, that there is fear when we're looking at the kind of data we need to collect. There's a certain amount of insecurity that comes up when we're told that we need to collect. It's also more difficult when you're sitting on the donor side and you're asking of it, because the immediate connotation is that it's a sort of like an audit. It's like sort of like a check on us and so on. And so therefore, how do you really manage your portfolio organizations in really, one thing is that they're going to give the data because they know disbursements are decisions are going to be based on that. But I also know that EdelGive, you have large, you have the large collaborators and you have the ECE program and getting all together. So what has been the approach in really telling people that, this is the kind of information that's required, this is how we use it? What has worked for you?
Yeah. I think first I would, I can't agree more with Ashutosh when he said, it's M&E is looked at as a department. And I think I somewhere feel that's one of the biggest challenges that the organizations need to address. M&E has to be considered as aggregated and a segregated part of the entire game. They are aggregated when it comes to monitoring the program, and it comes, they are segregated part when you are looking at an evaluation of the program, because then you need a third person's view on that. But usually what happens is the M&E person is looked as Ashutosh rightly mentioned, is that devil who is going to come and put the fence around the program people, right? But that's not the case. I think it's important that they are made part of the program, right? And that's how we have tried to address this challenge at EdelGive. So when we look at the grant proposals, what we do is we invest in conversation dialogue with our partners, help them understand, giving them the first opportunity to say how they look at the program, how they want to monitor the program, what are their ideas of impact, what are their ideas of outcome, how they are going to achieve it, on what timeline, how they want to achieve it, and they feel it's feasible, it's pragmatically ambitious, and then we start taking that dialogue ahead from there. We always also try to put the reporting to minimum. That's one of the important thing that we have put a lot of premium on, that we are not overburdening any of our organizations. We are going to collect only what we require to understand.
Yeah.
And that's what we achieve through the constant engagement with organization. So any of our grant would not have more than, I think if I take an average, will not have more than 10 to 12 data points to report at end of a quarter.
Correct. Okay.
And if you look at the entire set of indicators that the organization has to report in entire year, being applicable at different points, being outcomes or output indicator, the number would not go beyond 2022 max. And I'm saying this is a combination of some process, output, outcome, and impact indicator. So you are not really required to report on them all every time. Right. That's how we keep it to minimum. Now, the other point that we very carefully look at is the organization's capacity.
Yeah.
You can't put something on the organization just because you need it, and the organization doesn't have capacity. It's not going to serve anybody's purpose. So it's important that we help organization doing it. And I take pride in saying that M&E capacity building is one of the important pieces that we work in, whatever form it may be. It may be in form of use of technology to right to the basic things of developing an M&E plan. It could be anything in between. But we provide them the support. If the organization doesn't have capacity to say to measure an outcome, right? Now, how can we use proxies in such cases?
Absolutely.
How can we help organization to really build that capacity? Connect them to a third-party agency. Let them understand, engage them in that process, and let them understand how it can be done. And then in the following years, you can have them also experience it, supporting that entire exercise to take it up themselves, right? Because it will not happen overnight.
Yes.
Right. The capacities in this cannot be built overnight.
Absolutely.
Even you have data, the interpretation capacities cannot be built overnight. And
Absolutely.
you require some time on that.
Very true. Very, very true. Dr. Sarika, when we were putting together our research for this session, one of the things that came up was that when you're looking to really build a sort of a data-driven culture in an organization, there's an equation. And interestingly, it said 50% people, 30% processes, and 20% technology. Because in our experience, often we think that it's technology, which is, maybe 50, 60%, which I'm going to go back to Ashutosh. But I really want to understand at Raah, and I think what caught my attention was really, what you've been speaking about in one of your articles about how you actually trained people down right at the last mile to really collect and generate that data and information, which also brings me back to Atul's point, right? I mean, building people's capacities, this sort of culture that we talk about. Would love to hear what would really worked and what was some of the sort of hurdles, if you want to call it, or the resistance that you might have faced and you would have to overcome. Over to you, Dr. Sarika.
Thank you so much, Vijaya. It's always a pleasure to be on Social Lens events and talk about our experience, and happy to share the panel with elite people like Dr. Gandhi and Ashutosh. Wonderful being here. We have been very, very conscious about data. Data has driven all our decisions. We consider data to be the lifeline of organization. So, right from, as you mentioned, that right from the person on the field, the junior most level person to me who's kind of leading the organization, all of us use data, and every day, like literally our conversation begins with data. So I think it has to be a culture in the organization, and you have to build it as a culture in the organization, that you have to think data, talk data. And as Dr. Gandhi rightly said, that, not too much data. You have to actually identify what data points you really want. I think that is very, very critical. The problem, I think, what I have seen in early stage organizations especially, is because the social problems are so intertwined that it becomes very easy, difficult sometimes to articulate exactly what data points you are trying to look for. So I think that clarity of understanding, clarity of thought is very important, and communicating that clarity of thought across the organization is very, very critical to use data very effectively. So I think that we have been very successfully able to do. And as you rightly said, that it's primarily about people, it's primarily about processes, and technology is just the enabler. And technology can become very overwhelming, especially for field staff and especially for smaller organizations, because the word is very, it means technology. Oh my God, how am I going to use technology? But technology can also be simple, small apps on your mobile phone, which can be used to capture data. Like, for example, we use lots of apps. So I think what we kind of did very successfully was slowly took one step at a time, built small capacity of our people, then took them to the next level, and then took them to the next level. So what typically is required is that clarity of thought, focus on data. And whenever we are actually designing a program, we are the first thing that I'm asking my people is, what are the problems you are seeing? What will tell you that there is change? How do you define change? And what that data point you need to capture to identify change? And so that is where we begin. So everybody comes out with their own versions of change, that, okay, I will maybe track this, maybe I will track that. And then you have 20 odd data points that actually come up. And then we kind of discuss each one of them, because see, what happens is that each data point also has multiple inferences. Correct. Like, simple. So then what do you need that data point? How do you infer? And so, for example, we work on water scarcity. And when I ask people that, how will you know that there is water scarcity? The first question is, I will ask the woman that how many kilometers she walks. Correct. Now, the problem is that you are asking a woman who probably has never gone to school, who probably has no sense of direction, who probably
Distance.
has very limited sense of distance, and who probably has had a very bad day because of the multiple social problems that she has faced during the day. How can you base your inferences based on the data that she's giving you? She may say 5 kilometers, which you may conclude that, oh my God, there's so much water scarcity in her village. But her limited understanding of distance, she may just say 1 kilometer, which may force you to conclude that there is no water problem in her village. So clearly, I think collecting data is a art and a science, and with experience you pick up all these nuances as to what to ask, whom to ask, when to ask, importantly when to ask, and how much to ask. So not too much can be asked, and honestly technology can be a great enabler here. For example, today, this was what we used to do a couple of years ago, but today we don't ask these questions at all. When we want to understand the water scarcity, we use technology. We just do power walk in the village. We do GPS mapping of all the water structures. We use Google Maps to actually calculate the distance between the hamlet, and we just ask questions that when does this well dry, when does this check dam dry, and based on that, and then we kind of create our own inferences, and then to validate the data we do a focus group discussion. Simple. So that is very minimal data collection, minimal interaction, and much superior data that you have at your hand. So I think it's a iterative process. You evolve slowly, and then slowly you get there. So people should not, I think organizations should not be scared of the word data, should not be scared of the word technology. And there are very simple ways to maneuver through this data and technology jungle and get there and do what you want.
It all sounds very wonderful, and I love the storytelling, the way you put the whole water scarcity problem and this thing. But Dr. Sarika, again, I do want to understand the piece on resistance, because I think whether it is in the design of data, whether it's in the collection, and also the fact that a lot of the data is generated at ground, right? So not all of them understand, because in that data value chain, there's somebody who's collecting it, somebody who's analyzing it, it's being interpreted, somebody is working on a report, somebody's submitting it to the donors, or even internally program teams are debating. And really, how do you drive the understanding across all these different levels where people have different capabilities, they have their own mindsets, they have their own understanding, and they have their own insecurities when they've been told that they have to do this. So just want to kind of understand it, because I don't think this is going to be unique to, this is going to be something which is going to be there across any organization. We use the word digital transformation, big words, but this is where it all begins. So just wanted to understand how you must have faced some bit of it, and how is it at Raah?
Absolutely. I mean, there is resistance, especially because you are expecting people who have never stepped out of their village, who probably have only used phones to call and call people. That's about it. They don't know any other usage. Maybe take photographs. That's about it. No other usage is known to them. And now you are expecting them to actually do reporting on the phones. And that's, kind of, but there has been resistance. But what we have always done, and we have believed in, I am an extremely firm believer in demonstration effect, and identifying early adopters. And honestly, you will find early adopters everywhere, whether it's any organization, whether it's beneficiary. You go to a village and you want to try out, you want to do some experimentation, you want to do some put in place some innovative practices, there'll be two early adopters, and that is enough. Even if I get one early adopter, I think my work is done, because then once that early adopter, so that's what we did, in our team, I found who's the early adopter. I could find two of them who were early adopters. I just transformed their thinking about data, their thinking about everything, addressed their insecurities and stuff like that, drilled into them why this is important. And your job is linked to the kind of quality of data that you collect. So, and then left it to them to kind of convert everybody else into this. And they made it sound so exciting, so interesting, because if I would have done that, probably the resistance would have been there. But when their own peers are doing it, there is less resistance, there is more adaptation, there is more learning, and they are much more comfortable learning from their peers than probably they would have been from me. Or if I would have taken somebody, spend a couple of ₹1,000 taking somebody from Mumbai to do this training program, the impact wouldn't have been as much. So I think all organizations should just look for that early adopter who can then who can do the tipping point for you.
Very, very interesting. Look for a data champion within the organization. Ashutosh, I want to kind of hear from you really on two things. One is, picking up from where Dr. Sarika left off, and again, coming back to this, do you think that across organizations are, the whole data-driven culture, is it largely still leadership-driven? Is it top-down driven? That's one part of it. Then the next question, which is an automatic thing, is really then what sort of technology should we adopt? Because just right now, I think the amount of technology solutions that are coming and hitting us, every day there's something new. And one of the things we're just telling a lot of our nonprofit partners is, look where you are in your data journey before you start. I don't think we're opposed to the idea of technology. I think technology is great, but you first need to really see where you are. So two questions for you. One, to really drive a very inclusive sort of approach around data as a data-driven organization. Where do you see the resistance? Where do you see the opportunities? I like the idea which Dr. Sarika gave us. And then really on the big decision around technology, because I have questions then for Atul. And Susan, I'd just like to bring it up here that I will be asking you a couple of questions, please. I hope you've had your morning caffeine shot.
Yes, Vijaya. So
yes, Ashutosh.
The first question, which is with respect to the resistance of data, right? Absolutely in sync with Dr. Sarika's thoughts. What we also have seen is organizations which have worked bottom up as an approach to really adopt, whether it's data or technology, have succeeded faster than organizations which have tried to imbibe a top-down culture. In order to do that, I think it's extremely important for us to understand what is it that every stakeholder within the organization requires to succeed in his or her job. If we have been able to successfully quantify that and showcase as a pilot, then I think we have had a lot more early adopters than following a top-down approach,
okay,
be it for data or technology. And that's something that we have also tried to address with our work in the past, where we have seen organizations, and I'm going to segregate this, Vijaya, although I wouldn't want us to think that data and technology are two different pieces.
Yeah,
they go hand in hand. But Absolutely. The reason why I'm talking of the two is because we need to understand what kind of data will help every stakeholder succeed. Mm-hmm. And then from there, pick up what kind of technology do we need for the team to begin with, right? And we also have gone through this discussion that as Excel is the Swiss Army knife, WhatsApp is also technology, SMS is a technology. It depends on what we need at this point in time versus what we should be doing because somebody else is doing the same.
Right.
Yeah, and I think if we are able to do these two things, I think we will arrest a lot many more problems, resistance, and work towards being successful together as a team and as a domain.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you, Ashutosh. I'd just like to bring in, if the panel will indulge me, I'd just like to bring in somebody who's there in the audience and just ask Susan, who at Dalian and has a India portfolio as well. And before I move back to Atul. So Susan, welcome. And I'm sorry for the unexpected spotlighting you in the panel, but it's always good to hear your perspective as well. You have an India portfolio, you have a portfolio of organizations that Dalian supports, and we've been doing some work with you at Social Lens. You also work very closely with EdelGive, and you've been following the conversation very clearly. What are some of the observations that Dalian has made when we're talking about the driving towards sort of a data-driven approach for organizations, drawing insights? It allows for not just the donors, but for the organizations themselves to understand their programs better, which allows them to make changes and so on. So would just like to hear, your thoughts around that as well, Susan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be very spontaneously, Vijaya, because I haven't prepared at all for this. Oh, just a moment. But I mean, I was taking notes while I was listening, and maybe I would like to start a little bit about this resistance. I mean, it was discussed in the panel, but not actually as I look at it or as we experienced it. I think resistance, I mean, as Dalian, I must be maybe say that we are very open. Like EdelGive also, we tell that people also upfront, our partners, to help them build their own capacities for data-driven approaches, right? Because we are convinced we are a very small organization and we try to see where can we make a difference. And we are convinced that more and more the demands will go up by donors in terms of, that NGOs, NPOs choose data-driven approaches. And as you were saying, most of it are actually not used to that, not prepared, especially the smaller ones. And we try to help them build. Now, even that we offer it, doing it, right? Vijaya, you have been involved in such efforts. Even though that we offer it to them, we tell them we're going to finance it. We experience a resistance.
Yes.
And I was wondering, why is that so? And I think we donors have a responsibility here too. I think, when you look at the for-profit situation, as it was mentioned, it's very clear to the for-profit organization that if we know the data, right, we're going to perform better. And we know that we perform better very easily because we're going to gain more money, right? I think for an NGO, it's a different situation. It is still like this. It means it's a measurement exercise. They're going to be measured against the expectations of a donor. Donor wants to see a certain impact. And there is always a risk if you start looking into data that somebody might be disappointed, right? That we might see that the efforts of the last 3 years have not led actually to the result we wanted to see. And I think that there is a big fear, at least I observed that in many of the organizations, that they do not want to be confronted with data. I think it starts with that. They are afraid of what am I going to see, right? Once I start digging into that. And that is a part of the capacities, etc. So what we see as Dalian, and that really takes time. 1-2 years, we have had concrete example where it took 1 or 2 years time of a relationship with a partner where we had to prove them, to give them the comfort level. We are not going to punish them. We want them to become better. And it is in their own, we give them a big opportunity here to become better. And then, of course, then they at least have the comfort level that Dalian will not walk away, but we will stay there, and we right. can accept disappointments, or we can accept, results that are not maybe that as it was on the paper when we started off.
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is a very human being, and I know it for myself. Many people do not like change. Yeah. And you have a lot of field workers that are out there and they're just used to do something a certain way, and they have an authority, and it's a challenge. All of a sudden, you have to confront yourself with, the fact that maybe the way you have been doing something is maybe not the way it should be done now, and you have to change. So that's, for me, is a second level of resistance. So, once the organization has the comfort level from the donor, they have to convince their own people that there is no, there is nothing bad in changing. There is nothing bad in improving, and the world has changed. Many of these organizations are out there 30, 40 years. They have done great work, but the world is changing. The demands of the donors are changing. The communities they have been working are changing. So maybe it's time to change something, and that is nothing bad. Doesn't mean that you have not done good work. It's just that's life. So that's a bit spontaneously what I was saying. And then maybe something which stuck with me, which I would very much subscribe, is Atul was saying less is more. We should not, very often we see that NGOs really like to build a lot of data, very complex log frames.
Yes.
Much easier to actually be simple, modest, and not trying to change everything. Try to have a robust theory of change with few elements and try to do that well. And also the notion somebody mentioned that how do we collect the data is at least as important as what data we collect. And that is also something we learned when we went into the field with experts and they told us, listen, that's all nice, these data, but the way they have been collected is actually not helping us at all. So I think, sorry. So that's a bit my observations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. Atul, I'm just circling back to you now. We spoke about less is more. So a couple of questions out here. I think one is anything that you want to introduce, by way of a system or by way of a sort of whatever, it's going to cost. It is going to cost. Everything has an attached cost, right? And are increasingly donors looking to say that, just like compliance cost has gone up today, right? Nonprofits in India, we steadily saw the compliance cost go up. Similarly, whether we want to call it M&E or we want to call it, I don't know whatever the other word to give, but this somewhere needs to get embedded into this thing. It cannot be viewed separately as outside of it. What are donors thinking? Are they willing to look at M&E cost, a part of cost allocation of program into M&E as well? And then whether they're going to use Google Sheets, they're going to use SMS, they're going to use a special technology tool, or they're going to just have two more data people sitting there who are working on it. I don't know, but are firstly donors willing to kind of explore those? How is the thoughts around that?
I think absolutely donors are willing to support. If you look at bigger organizations, they also have guidelines in terms of how much of total budget should be allocated to M&E.
Mm-hmm.
Some say 3%, 5%, 7%. These amounts would change, but yes, donors are willing to support it.
Okay.
It is also important that the organizations also demand for it, right? You cannot have, you can't serve anyone if you don't have brains. Now to generate that, you will need to buy it, generate it, right?
Absolutely.
So it's important that organizations also demand it, right? The data cannot just be generated, maintained, analyzed, and impact being shared with the donors if it is not supported adequately. Many of the organizations in our experience, we have seen that don't want to adopt technology because they are not sure if today this funder is supporting it, the other funder will support it or not. They are concerned about recurring costs, right? And I'm very happy that the donors are also coming up with willingly to support all these initiatives, be it adoption of technology, setting up proper M&E system. Donors are willing to support it, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of capacity building.
Right.
Absolutely. As Susan also just mentioned about it, Dahlia and EdelGive, and we also know organizations who work, and I'm sure you know many more such organizations who are not only willing to support it financially as part of budgets, but also provide over and above support to organization to build their capacity. So I think the world is opening up for that, and donors are, I think more and more donors, if not all, are thinking more and more number of donors have to think about it, because unless and until they extend the support towards this, it cannot be strengthened. And as they say, a country is poor because it's poor. A data organization will remain data poor because it is data poor. It's
true,
right?
Absolutely. Ashutosh, I'm just going to kind of put this question a little bit different. It's come from the audience. When an organization is, let us say a program is at a pilot, right? And then from pilot, it has to really, there's a proof of concept, they've got the pilot done. But honestly, a pilot, the sample, the data, the richness of data which you get in, is probably is a lot more extensive because of the kind of sample, because it is a pilot. But when you take that to at scale and you suddenly go from here, from point A, you to go to point, say, X, right? There's a leap that organizations really have to make. And what are the 2-3 top considerations that organizations need to bear in mind? Let's say when you're going from, say, a pilot of 5 schools and you're going to take this to 200 schools.
Sure, Vijaya. In fact, I'll just go back to one of my previous jobs where I was working piloting rural kindergarten education and scaling it across Karnataka and Maharashtra. I think one of the top factors to consider for a pilot to be scaled is the design of the program. And the design of the program is independent of what data you have collected and what technology you have used.
Okay.
They are incongruous, and we have to remember that at no point in time can we go ahead scaling just because our proof of concept has been verified. If the POC has taken into consideration the design for scale, and if we have collected enough metrics, and believe me that most organizations do not collect a lot of metrics when they are working on a pilot, because I'm not saying they're myopic, but they just want to figure out if the top 5 or 6 metrics are at this point in time being catered to.
Okay.
It's a great vision to have. But the moment we start basing our scale on that premise, it will fall apart, because there are a lot many more factors like Atul mentioned. It's about funding, it's about resource management, it's about understanding which kind of what inputs we need for each geography that we are getting into. Even within the same state, different districts have different ideas that we need to cater to and different goals. So that's number one is design. The second thing is, of course, technology. At no point in time can we scale without the use of technology. Unfortunately, the fear of technology, which was during the Industrial Revolution, is now being taken over by AI. Everybody thinks that our jobs will be taken over by AI. They are not. Technology has not taken away anybody's jobs. And all we have to do, just like we are trying to build a bottom-up approach in the organization for data, we should also do the same thing for technology as well. If you're able to showcase to everybody saying, hey, you just have to work 6 hours a day, and then 2 hours you can just upskill yourself and work on something else, and your life will become better using technology, everybody will start becoming early adopters.
Okay.
It's only through them that we'll be able to figure out if there is a challenge when we take it to scale.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the important factors which I think are very, very critical for scaling.
Thank you very much for that, Ashutosh. Atul, I'm just coming back to you we spoke about the rationalization of metrics. Ashutosh also said that, at pilots, you really need to look at as many metrics as you want. And probably then as you move into program, further maturity and scale, you'll start looking at which are the ones you want to keep and which are the ones you want to shed. I don't think there's no sort of reporting sort of standards and frameworks which have just come about just yet. I know that the Social Stock Exchange has put together some sort of a measurement framework, but currently, do you see that in the future? Do you expect that there'll be some amount of standardization? Because I also believe that the programs are nuanced and there are certain elements which go into each program as an outcome or as an impact. So do you envision that there would be standardized kind of reporting frameworks emerging in the near future?
I think with social stock exchange, that might happen. But I think it will be a very big struggle for organizations who are already struggling to, put in place mechanisms for measurement and have a lot of challenges around M&E to deal with, to reach to that level I think it will be very, very difficult for, for organization to match with it.
Okay.
Because, I don't also, there is another challenge which I see with the standardization is there are a lot of organizations dealing with a lot of issues in lot of approaches.
Yeah.
What exactly we are trying to standardize here, right? Are we talking about standardizing a reporting template? Are we trying to standardize how it should be measured?
Yeah.
Right? Are we trying to standardize some definitions for something? Right? I think it will be very important that it gets done in an inclusive manner, right? Because there are organizations, for example, if you say that organizations working on maternal child health should look at the child mortality rates, neonatal mortality, or early neonatal mortality rates as one of the indicators. Now, what if an organization is working in a small pocket, right? Because that intervention is required there and they are working there and serving to only probably 10,000 population. How are you supposed to really measure that? Because in case of that, calculating that particular indicator, you need 1,000 births as a denominator.
Yeah.
1,000 live births. How will you be able to standardize it? So should that organization not be measuring it? Then is that organization going to lose onto it? So I think that standardization will require a lot of inclusive, conversation to arrive at. Because I think the idea will also be how we can then scale up what interventions we see. Right? Yeah. The standardization will also help on that. But as I absolutely agree with how Ashutosh said is about program design. Yeah. I think many pilots look at what I want to scale up, and not as what will work at scale. I think the program design has to think about it, whether what I'm trying to do will work out at scale or not, because it's not only taking that one particular process to entire entire state, entire district, right? It's important that it works at scale, right?
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
the standardization, when we talk about in terms of measurement indicator, I still feel we have a long way to go to really arrive at that stage. It's not going to be the way markets look at P&L and other indices. It's not going to be that simple. We'll have to factor in everyone. Otherwise, what probably we will end up with is the bigger organizations would go further bigger because they have put in those mechanisms. They have that much of geography to measure those standard indicators, but others are losing out. I think that's not what we want here.
Before I just go back to Dr. Sarika, it's very interesting, Atul, because I think one of the things also about pilots, right, when we do, and one of the emerging areas in measurement is also behavior change measurement, which is now becoming fundamental to any sort of program you run. Now, the behavior change measurement and whatever you've done in a pilot is not necessarily going to have the same kind of behavior change when you take the program to scale, because obviously at scale, then you're layering in further the mindset differentiation, which is there in across different communities. So, and I haven't even opened up that topic today for the conversation today. I do know that there's a lab planned around it. So for all those behavioral scientists out there, where behavior change measurement has now become like sort of the most exciting area to be in, we realize that, again, I do see even behavior change measurement outcomes having a play when you're looking at something that you could measure as a good, favorable outcome in your pilot and what happens at scale. So coming back to you, Dr. Sarika, where do you see Raah going forward now from this? You've got onto your data journey, and we've heard how far you've come here. What do you see really moving forward? We're also in a world where we are also adapting to new working situations, new working styles, the way programs are being implemented. And I'm definitely going to pose this question to my other panelists as well, to both Ashutosh and Atul. are we going to be moving towards a, a greater reliance on data as far as organizations, as far as programs, and as far as impact comes? Because that would then have a lot of considerations for a lot of us on everything to do with people, processes, and systems. Dr. Sarika.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think last 2 years have been 1.5 years have been very remarkable for us, because while we were always on the data journey, I think we consolidated our data journey and made it more robust and kind of scaled it up since COVID happened, because we quickly realized that this is here to stay and this is going to make us more data dependent. And this clearly means that we have to build capacity and empower our field staff to do a lot of things for us, which otherwise we were doing. So clearly one of the important things was the MND part, monitoring and evaluation. I am not going to go there, or my team from Mumbai is not going to be able to visit very regularly on the field. So it is the responsibility will rest with my field staff. So it becomes very important to empower them and build their capacity to become the mouth, ear, face, everything of the organization, I mean, which otherwise I was doing, that role. So then when we realized that, we quickly identified that what are the tools that are required to build their capacity on, so that they can not only do the task of collecting data, performing activities, implementing projects, but also comparing the data and actually doing the evaluation and monitoring work, especially the evaluation work, that whatever we have done, what has it led to and stuff like that. So we have been able to kind of go on that journey, and I think going forward I would definitely like to keep it at that, and not only that but also scale it up big time, so that my field staff only tells me that change has happened or change has not happened, or what we wanted to achieve has not happened, or what we wanted to achieve has happened much earlier than we thought. So kind of empower them much more than what we are, because ultimately, I mean, I don't know, third wave, fourth wave. So it is, and I think once we have come this far, I don't want to go back and take everything in my own hands again. So I think we are heading there. And not only that, but another advantage was that there are other technology platforms which we going forward implemented, and my field staff, it became very easy for me to implement, because they got onto that journey very fast. Like for example, we now have a ERP system where we report every day, and they're updating whatever they are doing daily, which otherwise used to happen on WhatsApp, is now happening on the ERP system. So I think, and honestly, my field staff, they are all indigenous tribal people. Many of them have barely studied till class 10. They are not like graduates from high colleges, high worth colleges or stuff like that. And if we can do it, I think there is enormous hope for a lot of grassroots level organizations to implement technology, to use data more effectively, to implement ERP systems, to empower your field staff to actually do the MND on behalf of you and do it properly and correctly. For example, in the initial stages, we have done multiple things to validate the data that came out, especially on evaluation data. So we had put in place multiple checks and mechanisms to validate whether the data coming out is correct, right, accurate, how accurate, etc., etc. And honestly, now I am much more confident that we are there. So that is to answer your first question. I think I've also answered kind of your second question, that so going forward, I would like to consolidate this and take it, scale this up, so that we have the field staff who's implementing the data actually talks about monitoring and does the evaluation themselves.
Well, thank you very much for that response, Dr. Sarika. Ashutosh, so we've all agreed that COVID is now moved from being a pandemic to an endemic. And given that, what are your sort of parting words for all of us as far as organizations go? Are we moving towards a new, a more enhanced era of data generation and usage by organizations?
Well, Vijaya, firstly, I wish this all happened without the pandemic much earlier.
Yeah.
Now that the pandemic has stuck and we want to look at silver lining, yes, I think we are all moving there. I just hope that we had done this earlier. It's a good beginning for all of us. It is a change, like Susan also mentioned. It's a challenge, but I think just focusing on the actions, focusing on the intent, and just sticking by the design, I think we will just be able to do a lot better than what we all have been doing collectively. And data and technology are always to be looked as enablers, and which go hand in hand with every department.
Thank you for that, Ashutosh. Atul, are we moving? Do you envisage a future where we're moving away from the field visits and the joys, the highs and the lows, which went every time we went visiting ground zero to see what's happening, and all of us are now looking at electronic information at our laptops to see and understand. I do feel sad about that, because there was so much joy we drew every time we visited ground zero to see what was happening. But really, I mean, can all of us place the reliance on data, which is increasingly going to become the most foremost ways in which we're going to be looking at organizations and programs and impact?
I think, Vijaya, this is like saying, if I have an edtech available, can it replace teacher? Certainly not.
Yes.
So I am saying that, certainly you can't, say that the data will replace the field experience that you will be able to draw and learn a lot from there. Right, data will give you insights, right?
Yeah.
But as we always say, it's not only the quantitative data doesn't always, is able to bring out the entire truth. It also needs to be supplemented with some qualitative observations as well. I think that's going to be very important. What I also feel is that the pandemic has expedited this movement of adoption of technology and setting your measurements right.
Absolutely.
Because at this point of time, if you want to go out and seek funding, talk about what you have been doing, you don't have any other means.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think it has expedited, and I, in a way, as Ashutosh also said, I also wish that it would have it had happened without the pandemic. But yes, at least it has started. But it will certainly not replace the field experiences for sure. I also feel that the importance of data is also because with pandemic and with resources being diverted in to emergency requirements, there is also going to be a tough fight for those resources. It's not that the resources are plenty and after the emergency goes away, it will be all available. The resources are going to be always scared. Most importantly, the money resource.
Absolutely.
And I think everyone is looking at optimizing the achievements out of that resource. So the data is definitely going to be a need of the hour, and it's going to not lose its importance in time to come.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank the wonderful panel. I think it's been a fabulous discussion. We almost went into it with the right balance of the technical conversations, plus really, from a very, very sort of a human-centric perspective. I think Dr. Sarika, Ashutosh, Atul, thank you for bringing this together. I know there'll be more conversations that are going to continue as part of the Good Data Collective. For those of you who've seen, who want to be part of the Good Data Collective, write into us and let's explore how we can really take this mission forward. But for now, thank you all for joining in. Follow us on social media, look out for the virtual learning labs. And for all of you who've joined in, including Susan, all the way from Switzerland, thank you very much. Wish you all a lovely evening and the rest of the day. Thank you very much for being part of this today.
Thanks, Vijaya.
Sarika.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Sarika.
Thank you so much, everyone.